So, we are going to try something new. Star Trek Into Darkness was honestly one of my most anticipated movies of the year, and I'll admit I was slightly disappointed with it the first time I saw it in theaters. But I've seen it a couple of more times to where my opinion of it has actually changed. Not to mention, I just don't think my original review of it was very good, so let's try this again. Star Trek Into Darkness, the follow up to the 2009 reboot. After some time since the last movie, we rejoin Kirk, Spock, Uhura, Bones, Scotty, and Chekhov having their adventures in space. The main cast returns: Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, Zoe Saldana, Carl Urban, Simon Pegg, and Anton Yelchin, and they're all perfect in their roles. The movie opens up with a pretty fun action sequence that involves the crew trying to stop the volcano from destroying this primitive civilization on a small planet. It doesn't have the emotional impact that the original movie opened with, but the point of this action scene was really just to get you back into the swing of things with a solid action scene that reintroduces you to everyone. And I think it does that just fine. And I remember having a really big smile on my face when the actual title card appeared on screen. Now, what I like about this movie once it gets into the main plot is that the setup for the main conflict really doesn't have all that much to do with the main characters. It's this escalating conflict going on between two side characters that the main characters end up looking into. You have this terrorist on Earth who really has a bone to pick with Starfleet, and he strikes hard. Benedict Cumberbatch plays the terrorist John Harrison, and yes, 4 months later, I will still call him John Harrison. One of the attacks has a personal effect on Kirk, so Kirk is very motivated and he's out for revenge. Problem is, John Harrison quickly gets out of Dodge off Earth, so Kirk has to take the Enterprise and has to travel across the galaxy to get this guy. And with that setup, we have a fairly solid action film. But that's what this movie has really been criticized for by Star Trek fans, being an action movie, whereas the Trek that they grew up with is more philosophical and meditative. But to me, the action in this movie, for the most part, felt organic. Like, it really felt like action for the sake of action. For the most part, of course. And what made this a cut above your typical action blockbuster was that I thought it touched on some good themes. Like, I appreciated a reflection on death and the feelings that come from tragedy and losing loved ones. It's brief, but it does humanize the characters more. And then, of course, Kirk does find himself in a moral dilemma, and you wanted to see him make the right decision. And even though this movie has a darker storyline, it's really funny. I didn't think the jokes from the first movie worked as well for multiple viewings, but the jokes in the darkness hold up completely well because I laughed during every consecutive viewing. This movie's cast works so well together, and everyone is fun to watch. Even the new addition to the crew works well, Alice Eve. But seeing how this is an action film, let's get into the action. It starts out fairly standard, but it gets a lot better as it goes along. Like, that scene with the two ships in warp blows my mind each time. And of course, any movie that plays with gravity is getting a +1 for me. I love that stuff. I don't know if I can make it in time for this video, but I plan on coming up with the Matt Thomas anti-gravity seal of approval. So, I like the heroes. We have an effective villain, a few twists and turns in the plot, and for the sake of saving a few surprises for the movie, I love how they cut the trailer in a way that showed so many different scenes out of context. So, for that reason, I think Star Trek Into Darkness is a solid sequel, and probably my favorite blockbuster of the summer. It gives you the action, romance, comedy, and drama that anyone would look for in a movie. Some people may not like their Star Trek to be this accessible, but this movie is just tailor-made for people like me who just never got into the original Star Trek. And for all the plot holes that people bring up, I just don't care about them in this movie. And yes, that would arguably make me a hypocrite because I've harped on so many other movies like Now You See Me for their plot holes, but this movie just presents itself in such a way that made me really not notice these holes. And to be honest, I don't even agree with half the plot holes or inconsistencies that get brought up with this movie. The only thing I will concede on is Kirk's phone call to Scotty. That really was a stretch. But for all those compliments, I do have to harp on one thing, and that is the ending. That was a very big thing that happens to that city, and I feel like the movie kind of glosses over it to the point where I can't help but feel like that was an afterthought, and that was a pretty heavy afterthought. The characters hardly acknowledge it, and then when everything gets solved, the movie kind of skips over the fallout from everything that's happened and has this resolution solely for the main characters. So that was probably my biggest issue with the movie. And I'm not going to give it a pass for that, but it is something that I do have to force myself to overlook. With that said, I think this is a great summer movie. It moves fast, it has great action, provides a great sense of fun, and stars a bunch of ridiculously good people that can actually act. I'm sorry to see director J.J. Abrams leave the series for Star Wars, but hey, what can you do? And I want to mention how much I love the score for this movie over the original, so credit to Michael Giacchino for getting better with that. So, that's my review for Star Trek Into Darkness. I feel like I finally did this movie justice. So let me know what you think in the comments section, and if you like this re-review and you want to see more, please subscribe. I'd really appreciate it.